Ever wonder where your t-shirt came from? Well, it more than likely started in the field of Lubbock, Texas. Since the 1700s, cotton has been a major export for the United States, with most of the demand coming from the United Kingdom. With competition in the cotton industry, the United States was able to have a success because they were able to avoid the hassle of the labor markets by instituting slavery, having the governments back them up by legalizing slavery and various farm subsidies. The graph shows that the United States ruled over the cotton industry. Smaller, more undeveloped countries that also grew and exported cotton without farm subsidies was an unfair advantage. But perhaps the true unfair advantage to both smaller countries and slaves was the use of slavery for economic gains. The book describes slavery as the first significant American public policy that served to protect cotton growers.
After being grown in the cotton fields of Texas, your shirt will make its way to a country specializing in textile manufacturing. As we begin to move into the first industrial revolution, we see a vast majority of economies racing to the middle. Explains four shifts and by what comparative advantage each of those shifts came about. The U.S., Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Korea all had their turn at lead exporter. But it is China who will hold strong to that lead. Comparative advantage for Britain was technology until the U.S. took those ideas for their own. Japan led next with cheaper labor and time. Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Korea with a comparative advantage also in cheap labor. After being tossed and turned at every corner, the t-shirt that this book
However,
was based
in the
on
end, because of a 90% wage that was lower than Hong Kong, China seemed to have won the race to the bottom. But winning the race for China often meant losing for their citizens because of the unpleasant working conditions. Almost no rights and very little pay. More than 60% of the female workers were at the age of 13. Most of the country and maybe the world stood on opposing sides, corporations and activists trying to silence one another. But however, the people in China needed them both in order to create and reform labor laws that sought to help change harsh working conditions.
It is unusual to think that after being tossed and turned at every corner, the t-shirt that this book was based on finally makes it into the U.S. market. A web of liberalization versus protectionism. As opposing tides crash down on the importing regulations on imports, the t-shirt must still undergo some turmoil to be sold Congress to help shield the U.S. Protectionists of the textile industry are painfully aware that from 1991
However, in the end, because of a 90% wage that was lower than Hong Kong, China seemed to have won the race to the bottom. But winning the race for China often meant losing for their citizens because of the unpleasant working conditions, almost no rights and very little pay. More than 60% of the female workers were at the age of 13. Most of the country and maybe the world stood on opposing sides, corporations and activists trying to silence one another. But however, the people in China needed them both in order to create and reform labor laws that sought to help change harsh working conditions. Clothing given away by Americans formed the backbone of a dynamic global industry. These were the thoughts expressed going into the conclusion of this chapter. These were the thoughts expressed going into the conclusion the largest exporter in used clothing, and according to Rivoli, this is the last stage of a t-shirt, and according to Rivoli, this is the last stage of a t-shirt. The entities that exist within the industry are usually small businesses that exist within the industry are usually small businesses. Truckloads of clothes are family-owned businesses where there are sorted, assessed, and made ready for export. Where there are sorted, assessed, and made ready for exporters of the United States. 15 countries were among the top importers of the United States. But however, about 30% of the recycled clothing will not live another life. And instead will be disposed of because there is no demand in the world consumer market.